So after my last video on Benjamin politics, I don't see why I should have to debunk anything he says. The sheer fact that it came from him should be enough reason for you to completely disregard it, but let's see what he has to say about socialist quality of life.
Over 2/3 of the time, more capitalism was associated with better quality of life.
First of all, that says economic freedom, not capitalism. I also don't see how stable prices counts as economic freedom.
And I imagine its inclusion skews the results. It's probably also quite skewed considering the only studies they reviewed were ones that cited the Economic Freedom of the World Index,
a survey by a libertarian think tank with a questionable track record.
Note that among war and human rights, some of the variables found to be dependent on economic freedom
were the number of supermarkets and magazines. That's what they're finding to be positively correlated to economic freedom, not quality of life. This review is so biased.
As for communism, it's completely negatively associated with quality of life.
Notice how he says associated. This paper does not prove causation, nor was it aiming to.
It only includes these countries as a control for determining whether other factors like culture affect quality of life.
And it lists a few potential explanations for why it may be lower.
For instance, they were poorer than the countries they were compared to even before they were socialist. The dissolution of the USSR sent them into economic turmoil, and they had to face capitalist aggression. Also, note the paper says self-proclaimed communist. Communism means stateless, classless, moneyless, and socialist. The USSR was not that. Some left-wing libertarians would argue that they weren't even socialist because the state had control instead of just the public.
Ben, of course, knows this, but he has to work in as much propaganda as possible.
Soviets actually achieved a more nutritious diet than the Americans. Even the CIA admits this.
That's not what it says. It says they may. It's not from the CIA, it's from Reuters.
CIA.gov. Oh look, it's my source.
By citing this report, you're conceding to the economic calculation problem.
Except I didn't cite that. Also, this doesn't at all prove that the ECP is significant.
The Association for the Study of the Cuban Economy has several papers looking at Cuba before and after the revolution. Newsflash, the Castros did not improve a whole lot.
The first source confirms that Cuba does well on measures of human development.
It argues that Cuba isn't good because of a lack of political and economic freedom.
If you cannot prove it's good, I do not care about economic freedom.
As for issues with political freedom, this is not inherent to socialism. Left-wing libertarians aim to prevent this through decentralized revolution.
In the second source, there's a typo in the title. That is not a good sign of credibility. In fact, it was written by an American ambassador and Kirby Smith.
The only Kirby Smith Google knows died over 100 years ago.
The abstract is a Mises quote,
and of course they fail to account for the effects of US imperialism and blindly blame problems on socialism. For instance, they say the number of cars per capita has fallen. If you didn't know, the US embargo has prevented Cuba from trading with the rest of the world since the 1960s. They've been unable to buy new cars or even replacement parts, which is why their streets are covered in cars like this.
Why does this self-proclaimed anarchist love military dictatorship so much?
I never said I was an anarchist.
Also, Cuba actually has a great democratic system. If you want to learn more about it, check out this video. You know who did have a military dictatorship though? Batista, who Ben hypocritically defends.
Caloric intake actually fell under Castro.
I mean, it says why right there. This doesn't at all prove it's because of socialism.
Cuba already had one of the highest literacy rates in Latin America before Castro.
Okay.
And post-Castro, it improved very slowly.
Maybe because it was already almost at 100%.
Hugo Chavez's anti-poverty programs helped 20 million people.
Venezuela's poverty rate is 96%.
The collapse of the Venezuelan economy is unrelated. I'll make a video on it some other time.
In a previous video, this guy claimed that a majority of Soviet citizens supported socialism, therefore socialism is good.
Lying yet again. I didn't say that, I merely pointed out that people liked it. I did this because any government that doesn't have the support of its people is unjustified.
And this isn't even one of his worst videos. Antifa called them out in the past, for which he promptly got blocked. And check out my last video on him in which he blatantly lies about research.